Marcus Bennett stepped out of his Ford Explorer, adjusting the collar of his slightly wrinkled shirt after the long drive from Atlanta. Riverdale, a small town in the heart of Georgia, looked peaceful, with its tree-lined streets and old-fashioned coffee shops. But he knew all too well that beneath the surface lay a corrupt police system where abuse of power and racial discrimination ran deep like the roots of an ancient oak. Today, Marcus wasn't arriving as the new police chief. He walked through the station doors looking like an ordinary man. An old button-up shirt, faded jeans, and a pair of worn-out sneakers. No badge, no nameplate. Just a black man stepping into an unfamiliar precinct. Inside, a few officers gathered around the coffee machine, chatting and laughing. A small TV mounted on the wall played the morning news, while the occasional beep of a police radio echoed through the room. Marcus approached the front desk, but before he could say a word, a cold voice rang out from behind him. "Hey boy, what the hell are you doing here?" Marcus turned. A young officer, Ryan Walker, stood with his arms crossed, eyes filled with contempt. His unfiltered look into the department had just begun. Marcus turned slowly, his sharp eyes locking onto the officer who had just spoken. Ryan Walker stood tall, his posture rigid with authority, but there was a smugness in his smirk, the kind that came from a lifetime of knowing he could get away with just about anything. A few other officers leaned against the wall, watching with amusement, waiting to see how the scene would play out. Marcus felt a slow burn in his chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. He had seen this before, the casual disrespect, the unchecked arrogance. It was the kind of culture that festered when there were no consequences. He could already tell what kind of department this was. "I asked you a question," Walker said, taking a step closer, his voice dripping with condescension. "You lost or something? We don't do handouts here." Marcus exhaled, keeping his tone measured. "Didn't realize I needed permission to stand in a public building." Walker's smirk widened. "Public for who?" He chuckled, glancing at the other officers, who let out quiet laughs. Marcus clenched his jaw. He could feel the heat rising in the room, the weight of every pair of eyes fixed on him. He could leave now, walk away, and reveal himself later when he had full authority. But something in him refused to step back. This was the kind of behavior that thrived in silence, and silence had never been his way. Walker wasn't done. He stepped even closer, his chest nearly touching Marcus's. "I'm not gonna ask again. You need to get the hell out of here before we drag your ass out." The laughter in the room grew louder, emboldened by Walker's display of dominance. Marcus could see it in their faces, the sheer confidence that he wouldn't fight back, that he wouldn't challenge them. Then in an instant, Walker did the unthinkable. He spit. Warm saliva struck Marcus's cheek, sliding down his skin. The room erupted into laughter, a few officers whistling, others slapping their thighs in amusement. For a long second, Marcus stood completely still. A slow, eerie silence crept into the room, swallowing the laughter as the officers realized he wasn't reacting the way they expected. With deliberate slowness, Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out a white handkerchief. He wiped his face, calmly, precisely, folding the cloth with practiced ease. His heartbeat thundered in his ears, but he didn't let it show. Then he spoke. "Is this how you treat everyone who walks through these doors?" His voice was dangerously even, cutting through the space like a blade. Walker smirked. "Just the ones who don't belong." The laughter started again, but this time it was weaker, uncertain. Marcus nodded once, as if that was all he needed to hear. Without another word, he turned and walked away, heading straight toward the main office. Because now it was time. Time to show them exactly who he was. Marcus stepped into the main office, his stride slow, deliberate. His heart still pounded from the humiliation, but he had learned long ago to master his emotions. That moment in the break room, it wasn't just about disrespect, it was about power. Ryan Walker and the others had laughed because they thought they owned that space. They believed that men like Marcus didn't belong, that they could treat him however they pleased with no consequences. But they were about to learn just how wrong they were. The station's intercom crackled to life. "All personnel report to the briefing room immediately." Marcus straightened his shirt, wiped the last trace of spit from his cheek, and took a deep breath. Now was the moment to reveal himself. The briefing room buzzed with conversation as officers filed in, some still clutching coffee cups, others chatting about weekend plans. The laughter from earlier hadn't completely faded, and a few officers shot smug glances toward Walker, still riding high on his supposed victory. At the front of the room stood Captain Howard, a thick-set man with graying hair and tired eyes. He raised a hand, calling for order. "All right, listen up," he began. "As most of you know, Chief Reynolds retired last month. We've been waiting for his replacement, and today's the day." Marcus stepped forward from the side entrance, holding a dark leather folder embossed with the Riverdale Police Department seal. As he walked toward the podium, the air in the room shifted. Recognition dawned. The smirks disappeared. The laughter died instantly. Ryan Walker's face drained of color. Marcus set the folder down on the podium with deliberate ease. He let his gaze sweep across the room, pausing on the officers who had mocked him just moments before. When he finally spoke, his voice was even, steady, but laced with the weight of authority. "Good morning, my name is Marcus Bennett." He let the name hang in the air. Some officers swallowed hard. Others stiffened in their seats. "As of today, I am your new chief of police." A heavy silence filled the room. No one moved. No one spoke. The weight of the moment was crushing. Marcus clasped his hands in front of him, his posture firm. "This morning, I walked into this department as an unknown face. I wanted to see the culture here for myself, unfiltered. What I witnessed was disgraceful." He turned his gaze directly to Ryan Walker, whose jaw was clenched so tightly that the veins in his neck strained. Marcus took a step forward, his voice sharpening. "Respect is not optional in this department. Accountability is not a suggestion. If you wear this badge, you will uphold the values it stands for. If you can't, you have no place here." The room remained deathly quiet. Some officers shifted uncomfortably, their gazes dropping to the floor. Then Marcus delivered the final blow. "Effective immediately, Officer Walker is suspended pending an internal investigation." A ripple of gasps swept through the crowd. Walker's face turned a deep shade of red as he stiffened in his chair, his hands gripping the table. "This is just the beginning," Marcus continued, his voice calm but firm. "This department will change, and if you can't be part of that change, you're free to leave." The silence that followed was suffocating. For the first time, they all understood. Marcus Bennett was not a man to be underestimated. The tension in the briefing room lingered long after Marcus delivered his decree. Officers shifted in their seats, their faces a mixture of shock, embarrassment, and, in some cases, anger. Ryan Walker sat frozen, his jaw clenched, hands balled into fists. The weight of his suspension had hit him like a freight train, but there was nothing he could do. No excuse, no justification that would erase what had just happened. Marcus didn't linger at the podium. He had said what needed to be said. He turned, walking with measured steps toward Captain Howard, who gave him a firm nod of understanding. Without another word, Marcus exited the briefing room, leaving behind a stunned silence. The moment he stepped into the hallway, he took a deep breath, letting the weight of the confrontation settle over him. He knew this was only the beginning. Changing a department's culture wasn't about one speech or one disciplinary action. It was about consistency, about making it clear that the old ways would no longer be tolerated. By the afternoon, whispers spread like wildfire through the station. Some officers avoided eye contact when they passed Marcus in the halls. Others stiffened, standing at attention as if suddenly remembering what real discipline looked like. A few, however, were less subtle. As Marcus walked past a group of officers near the break room, he caught murmurs. Words like power trip and overstepping hissed under breath. He stopped, turning slowly, his sharp gaze sweeping over the group. "Something you'd like to say to my face?" His voice was calm, but the challenge in it was unmistakable. The officers exchanged uneasy glances before one of them, Sergeant Mitchell, stepped forward. A veteran of the department, Mitchell had spent years thriving in the toxic environment Marcus was trying to dismantle. "Chief," Mitchell started, voice level but laced with defiance, "some of us have been here a long time. We know how things work around here. You might have the title, but respect, that's something you have to earn." Marcus held his gaze, unblinking. Respect goes both ways, Sergeant. You're right, I intend to earn mine. But let me be clear about something. If you think respect comes from tolerating discrimination, intimidation, or abuse of power, then you're in for a rude awakening. Mitchell's expression darkened, but he said nothing. Marcus let the silence hang for a moment before stepping closer. You don't have to like me. You don't have to agree with me. But if you can't uphold the principles of integrity and professionalism, you won't have a place here. He let the words settle, then turned and walked away, leaving the group standing stiffly in the hallway. Later that evening, Marcus sat in his office, reviewing reports when a soft knock at the door broke his focus. It was Officer Elena Brooks, one of the younger recruits. She stepped inside hesitantly, her hands clasped together. Chief, I just wanted to say, what you did today, it meant something. A lot of us have been afraid to speak up for a long time, but if you're serious about changing this place, I want to help. For the first time that day, Marcus felt a small sense of hope. Then let's get to work, he said. Over the next few weeks, Marcus made his presence felt in every corner of the precinct. He walked the halls daily, observing, listening, and making it clear that his leadership wasn't just about words, it was about action. Some officers adapted, realizing that the old ways wouldn't be tolerated anymore. Others, like Ryan Walker and Sergeant Mitchell, resisted, their bitterness brewing beneath forced compliance. One evening, as Marcus left his office, he overheard hushed voices in the break room. Stepping closer, he recognized Mitchell's gruff tone. Guys turning this place into a damn daycare. Can't even joke around without someone crying about it. Another officer grunted in agreement. It's like he's trying to wipe out everything that makes us cops. Marcus had heard enough. He stepped inside, his presence sending a wave of tension through the room. You think accountability makes you less of a cop? His voice was calm, but the steel beneath it was unmistakable. If your job depends on disrespecting others, then you were never meant to wear that badge. No one dared to respond. Mitchell looked away, jaw tight. Marcus let the silence linger before leaving. As he walked out, Officer Elena Brooks caught his eye and gave him a nod of quiet support. Change wasn't easy, but step by step, he was breaking the cycle. Marcus's story teaches a powerful lesson about leadership, accountability, and the courage to challenge a broken system. True leadership isn't about maintaining comfort. It's about making difficult decisions, even when they're unpopular. Change doesn't happen overnight, and resistance is inevitable, but standing firm in one's values is the only way to create lasting impact. In our own lives, whether in workplaces, communities, or personal relationships, we must recognize that respect and integrity are not optional. It's easy to turn a blind eye to toxic behavior, but silence allows injustice to thrive. If we want real change, we must be willing to speak up, even when it's uncomfortable. The story reminds us that power should never be wielded to oppress. It should be used to uplift and protect. In a world where bias and discrimination still exist, each of us has a responsibility to stand for what is right.